The White House confirmed Friday that another staffer has tested positive for the coronavirus. That's now 2 staffers in just 2 days. The president says that employees will be tested daily to stem the spread. President Trump and the First Lady honored veterans Friday. They opted not to shake hands with those in attendance, but they also chose not to wear face masks. Natalie Brand has the latest from the White House.
President Trump announced the vice president's press secretary, Katie Miller, has tested positive for the coronavirus.
She hasn't come into contact with me. She spent some time with the vice president. I understand Mike has been tested, vice president, and he tested negative.
This comes one day after news that one of the president's valets who served him meals tested positive Wednesday.
I do what I have to do. We've taken very strong precautions at the White House.
Several aides to the vice president were told to get off an airplane for testing before Pence headed to Iowa to meet with faith leaders and food suppliers. Here in Washington, the president laid a wreath to mark the 75th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day at the World War II Memorial. Though he and the First Lady kept their distance, neither they nor the veterans in attendance wore masks.
Did you consider wearing a mask when you were with them, given their
No, because I was very far away. I appreciate the question.
The president's economic advisors warn of a tough economic road ahead after Friday's jobs report showed more than 20 million jobs were lost in April, the biggest drop since the Great Depression.
May's going to be another tough month.
During a lunch meeting with Republican lawmakers, the president continued to predict an economic bounce back.
It's going to be transition to greatness because we're going to do something very fast and we're going to have a phenomenal year next year.
House Democrats are calling for a 4th big economic stimulus package to deal with the financial fallout. But Senate Republicans want to wait and evaluate how the multi-trillion-dollar measures they've already passed are working. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
For more on this now, I want to bring in Daniel Lippman. He's a Politico reporter covering the White House. Daniel, thanks for joining us. As we just heard, Vice President Pence's own press secretary, Katie Miller, tested positive for COVID-19. Was she traveling with the vice president on any of these recent trips?
She has been. I don't know if she traveled this week, but she has been in close contact. She is his main communications person, and so while Trump said that he wasn't in much touch with her, she definitely has been in a close working relationship with Vice President Pence.
So I'm wondering, Daniel, if you can tell us what kind of precautions are now being taken to protect the vice president and others who work in the White House and the vice president's office.
So after that valet tested positive yesterday, that personal valet for the president, and there are 5 valets. They do their laundry. They help get him Diet Cokes from outside the Oval Office. Now, anyone who is in proximity with the president and the vice president, they get tested daily. And so that's about 10 staffers in the vice president's office. And they're doing, extra cleaning of the White House. Not many employees are coming into work as much. And it's just, we all hope for the best for Katie, and she is asymptomatic. That's what we understand. I think that's what she told NBC. But when the own spokesperson for the coronavirus task force at the White House tests positive, this is kind of a nationwide huge issue, and it's hitting home at the White House.
Given that she was asymptomatic, it's curious that the response is to take people's temperatures, because if you're asymptomatic, it's not necessarily showing up then in a temperature scan. I'm also curious then about President Trump's meeting with Republican lawmakers earlier. No one at the table, as you know, Daniel, was wearing a mask. Reporters also noted that many of the staffers were seen without masks. Why aren't they doing it? Is it a political move? We know President Trump has talked about this in the past, that he doesn't feel like he ought to be wearing a mask behind the Resolute desk. But what about when meeting other people? And now that some of the White House staff are testing positive, might that change?
Yeah, anything is possible, but they want to really shift to reopening the economy. And so if they start to introduce measures that indicate that this virus is still a huge threat, or at least, they amp up the messaging on that. And it's kind of a fashion statement, but it has real public health concerns and risks. to not wearing a mask, then that will kind of supersede their message that things are getting back to normal and that, by Memorial Day, America will largely be reopened. I think Vice President Pence has said something along those lines. And so even though they have not been told to not wear a mask, there is kind of implicit pressure on them not to buck the trend, not to kind of look alarmist. But they're, trying to not shake people's hands. There's no hugs going on in the White House. And so they're trying their best. And they are properly tested every day. And that's something that most Americans going to their jobs, even essential workers, they don't have that luxury.
You could also read it the other way, though, as part of getting back to normal in this new normal, and part of reopening the business means that we have to take some necessary precautions, not just to protect ourselves, but to protect others. And that's part of the reason why the Surgeon General now recommends that people wear face masks. But let's talk about a Pew Research poll on Thursday that around 2/3 of Americans are still concerned about states lifting those restrictions too soon. With more than 33 million Americans filing for unemployment in the past 2 months, there is certainly an urgency to return to normal. Tell us more about what the president had to say about this.
Yeah, so they're working with the CDC new guidelines that were much more detailed, and they had been squashed. A draft of that got leaked to the media. But states really need those guidelines and businesses really to open up, because it kind of provides a detailed roadmap. But they didn't want to give churches. They want to make sure churches, people can still sing in choirs and sing in pews. But there is kind of we haven't not seen much from the CDC, and they've been quashed again this week with those drafted guidelines. And so what the president is basically saying is that, it's up to the states to follow the guidelines, but he wants America to reopen. And he knows that it's critical for his reelection prospects to get that unemployment number down after it's been just surging in recent weeks.
And on that same note, the president also hinted about the next phase of relief for the economy. Can you tell us a little bit more, Daniel, about what that might look like?
So it's going to be a combination of things, and Democrats are still hashing it out. So nothing is set in stone yet. Pelosi wanted to introduce something next week, but Democrats, her own kind of left flank, they want to make sure that everything is included that they want. They don't want to act prematurely. But we're looking at lots of money to the states, localities. This is a huge lobbying push from Washington. So this is seen as one of the last measures to get the economy back and running. And so every industry is trying to get a piece of this. Airlines, restaurants, everyone that has been impacted, and that's basically all parts of the economy. They want to get help in this. And so it could end up being $2 trillion, but there's going to be resistance from Republicans who say that we've exploded the deficit too much and we've got to tighten our belts.
Well, know that they're hashing that out. And while they're doing so, President Trump has claimed that some Democratic leaders don't actually want the economy to recover. Why is he saying that? Is there any evidence of that, or is this all part of that reelection campaign, Daniel?
I think most Democrats, they want the economy to recover quickly, or else they would not be trying to have lots of fiscal stimulus, because all of that money is going to help both Americans in their eyes, and also unintentionally it will help President Trump's reelection prospects, because the economy will be better if at least this year, maybe not 20 years down the line when we have to pay for all that debt, but it will be better if you actually pump more money into the economy, because consumer demand is way down. And so maybe if you ask, if you put truth serum in Democrats who are, kind of live on Martha's Vineyard, they don't have a care in the world money-wise, maybe they think that it's kind of, just desserts for Trump to have a bad economy eventually, and that this will lead to his downfall in November. But most Democrats, I think, would like the economy to get back to normal. And that's what their constituents want too. And many Democratic groups, young people, minorities, those are the ones who are most affected by the job cuts, fewer Trump voters in the Midwest are as effective.
Very interesting. Daniel Lippman, thank you.
Thank you.
Many states are moving forward